Today, I see the world confused, angry, sad, and scared. The world's social system and people's mind only change when people start to die. We have way more than enough people died, not only from the pandemic, but the toxins of today's society that became heightened by the pandemic. So what do we take from this experience? How do we grow from it? There are many ways this pandemic evoked the long overdue changes that must be made. This is my take as a Tokyoite woman born in the 90s who has spent her adulthood between the West and the East. My take on this pandemic is that we can make this time into a life-changing opportunity if we decide to face the reality of the world and realize that in order to better this world, we need to start respecting ourselves. In my given opportunity to compare my country, Japan, to the Western developed countries, my perspective has always been on the difference in the way people keep their human soul. I've learned so many different ways people create this beautiful mess we call life in different parts of the world. In the UK, daily life seemed cultured and cozy, and I felt that sense of pride in their heritage that lived through their customs, not only in the form of given traditions, but also in their deliberate choice in creating their modern society today. In the Southern California, things were fun, exciting, and new, and it made me feel everything is possible. People were very active, and the society was very energetic. In France, people seem to take a big space in their daily life for their own pleasure, and unlike many other cultures, I felt that being authentic is the key to the social life in France, as opposed to the seemingly superficial courtesy that many other parts of the world, including Japan, prefer. And the people seem to have much more tolerance for the human errors. We all seem to have our own ways to keep our souls straight. In my country, Japan, structures create a large sense of peace. The skills to navigate life harmonious to the surrounding environment is the most highly regarded quality. This is what we refer as the skills to read the air. However, like in any culture, there are positives and negatives born in such structure. It is true that living abroad makes you become more aware and appreciative of your origin. My initial motive for gaining foreign perspectives on life was to run away from the uncompromisable fixed life structure that the Japanese society imposed on everybody, sacrificing their variety of qualities. It was the life structure that I could not possibly relate to and could no longer tolerate as a teenager. As a result, I became a rebellious teen that was classified as gyaru, a term that is referred to the female demographic whose apparent lack of interest in work or marriage regarded as childish or a hussy. Living abroad helped me heal from that, not by helping me to make peace with what I thought was problematic. Instead, it made me realize why I felt this way from the historical and philosophical perspectives, and gave me the clarification of what truly needs to change in our society. Living abroad allowed me to conceptualize cultures and to distinguish the core essence of the philosophy that composes the Japanese culture from the modern customs that were born in the adaptation to the political and economical needs, which often oppose to the Japanese philosophy. This paradox was the reason why I lacked respect for the authority. Ironically, what created this paradox also seems to be the nature of the Japanese philosophy. The harmonious nature of the Japanese philosophy made our society harmonize our moral principles that we were proud of with mindless devotion to the economic growth. I get it. We only did what we needed to do with what we knew. After the war, we couldn't afford to prioritize moral principles over surviving. This applies to not only Japanese people. Once we survived, our society became as if we were going through a puberty, the period where we tried to reclaim our identity by making mistakes of being inconsiderate of others, get lost in the excitement of the partying, and forget to be appreciative of our mother nature. Now, we have reached our time to grow from our mistakes. However, in an attempt to find a solution to this problem, we face the depth of the complexity of this subject. How do we reconcile our desire to lead a safe and secure life while respecting ourselves and others in such competitive economical climate we live in? Also, this paradox of values in the society is hard to face. Once you are awakened to this reality, it challenges our personal integrity, the sense of growth as a society, and our confidence in the direction that we are taking as a collective being. That's why many people have stopped questioning. In the midst of this great global economic shift, where the poor becomes poorer and the rich becomes richer, many of us are forced to wake up from this endless rat race. I woke up from my nightmare, where I thought the condition of this world I live in requires to sacrifice my moral standard for my desire for the better future. I want to be a good person, but I also want to enjoy beautiful things in this world. I want to respect others, but I also need to compete with them in order to secure my employment. The game we have been playing is a chess. Someone's win equals someone's loss. This is why it never felt right to me to live in the Japanese society, where our cultural philosophy and the skills required for the actual life are just completely opposite. This is what needs to change. Then what is a win-win game? What is the thing that gives us what everybody ultimately wants from the extensive financial achievements? Respect from others and the respect we have for ourselves. I think we need to give more values to the respectful actions, because this will ultimately give us what we truly want in life, the meaning of life. The financial or educational achievements are only the means to an end. What we are desiring is an honorable soul, but we are playing the wrong game that will never lead us to what we want. If respect is to be our new currency, how do we measure? because even good wills can cause damages with ignorance. How do we measure someone's moral? I'd like to open a discussion on this important subject by suggesting my idea. I think this should be based on the psychology and neurology, because we are spiritual beings. We're now talking about securing the dignity of human soul in the society, and the psychology and neurology are the scientific studies that constructively approach our spirits. So anything that reduces the pains in the society is a value. I think that the biggest factor that creates pain, anxiety, and scarcity is the competition. If we stay competition-oriented, we stay animals who only think of survival. We have the ability to go beyond that. We need to create systems and minds that celebrate uniqueness. In my previous video, I explained how miracle we are to exist as who we are. From our mother's 100,000 variable eggs and our father's 12 trillion sperms, the chance of us to be born the way we did was 1 in 4 quadrillion. This is the origin of the Japanese word arigato for saying thank you, meaning what an invariable miracle. Because for us individual miracles to cross each other's path and give kindness to each other, it is such a mind-blowing miracle to happen. If we start celebrating uniqueness instead of making a winner and losers, the distribution of the values and the powers will be much more equal. And instead of fighting for the piece of pie, we can bake more pies for everyone. Japanese philosophy comes from Buddhism, which comes from Zen philosophy, which comes from tea philosophy, which comes from Shintoism. I'm not a religious person. I just believe in everything in this world deserves respect. Shintoism teaches us that there are gods in everything. Your hair, your coffee cup, trees, houses, they all represent God. So that we treat things with respect. But the more we develop our economy, the more wasteful, the more competitive, the more self-serving we became. In psychology and neurology, it has been proven that the war overdevelops the reptilian survival brain in a person and oppresses the empathetic mammal brains. Narcissism is an after effect of the war, and even 70 years after the war, it's been tossed onto the following generations. We live in an era where we have technologies and resources that enable us to feed everyone with all the life necessities to live comfortably. But for how long are we going to subscribe to this 1% winner and 99% losers game? It is certainly not the world I want my children to have to live. As humans needed to go through the agricultural and technological advancements to get to where we are today. Thanks to these past pains, we have enough to afford to develop our psychologically advanced world today. The key is to remember to respect, and like anything, it starts within. Let's start to celebrate our uniqueness. and everything you have done that you think was morally the right thing to do. You should praise yourself. We need to reclaim our self-dignity so that you value less of how much you win in the competition you've unsubscribed. If you feel you have nothing to offer, there are 3 things I'd like to suggest. The first one is to start respecting your needs and desires. Spend time with yourself and let yourself explore what interests you. Your desires might come from the familiar pains, which is often how people find the passion and the meaning of life. To find a solution for yourself and share with the world. That's what I am doing now. Perhaps your web browser history or YouTube history might suggest the areas of your interest. The second one is to learn cooking. We have so many species that we consume to create a wonderful dish. When you cook, you'll realize that missing one ingredient can completely ruin the dish. This will make you realize how much variety is important. And finally, the third one is to think about the greatest human you admire and know that this person also needs someone who cares about them, shares their interests, accepts their flaws and still embraces them, and laughs together with them. If you continue to explore yourself, you will realize that the internet allows us to meet like-minded people. The place where we feel safe, understood, and appreciated. If you did these 3 things one by one, I guarantee you that you will be able to realize that you absolutely do have something to offer to this world. Then, once we start to respect ourselves this way, respecting others will not be so difficult. This must subscription to the single criteria of social status to determine the value of a person is the single source of every inferiority complex that creates pains, divisions, then angers, then killing each other. Valuing too much of the competition is what creates miseries in this world. Once we start to celebrate our uniqueness, we will be able to respect ourselves. When we respect ourselves, we start to respect others. Then competition becomes less meaningful because everyone wins in different aspects. Then financial success becomes less meaningful because the goal shifts from being the winner to being able to celebrate your uniqueness. Once financial success becomes less meaningful, waste will be reduced and the hierarchical society becomes ineffective. Then the world will be a much more equal place to live in. So my take on this pandemic period is that we can turn this event into our benefit by reflecting on how we live now and whether or not it's leading us to what we ultimately want, and realize that we can start respecting ourselves by celebrating our uniqueness and find like-minded friends online so that we no longer suffer from this survival competition that we now can graduate from. Let me remind you again, the chance of us to be born the way we did was 1 in 4 quadrillion. You represent 3 million years of human history, an estimated 150,000 generations of your ancestors. I hope you make this pandemic period to start your personal revolution, to change the world into a more respectful one, for yourself and for everybody else. ありがとう。